panel over all the pump to let you know some of the item descriptions and their locations within the unit. This is a K-series pump, a redundant model at that, so you'll notice that there's an intensifier on the front and the back both. If we start in the middle here, this complete assembly is the intensifier assembly, working our way from the middle out. You're going to have your hydraulic drive, your proximity switches, your high pressure cylinder, your seal head nut on the end, and this assembly going into the end is a seal head assembly itself. Inside that you have the inlet and outlet check valves for the machine, but they're inside. Of course, on the outside you have your high pressure fittings and your high pressure tubing. In the center of the machine, a lot of people, this is an attenuator, but there's a lot of people out there, it's commonly known as an accumulator as well. Either one of those descriptions is just fine. It's just a pressure vessel. And so we'll go ahead, that pretty well concludes the top of it. We'll get below board here and show you what's going on down there. Below board here we have several different items to go over. I'll start from left to right, and then when we get to the right, we'll of course we'll give another view around the front of the machine, so you'll be able to see some of these items maybe twice, but a little bit more clear. On the left hand side of the pump, of course, you have your electrical control panel, the incoming power down here from your panel to your electric motor. Behind your electric motor assembly you have the hydraulic reservoir. Up here we've got ball valves on this particular unit because it's a redundant style machine. On most of your regular machines, the hosing will go directly into the intensifier. You won't have these ball valves. They basically control the flow of the oil from front to back. Between your electric motor and your Rexroth hydraulic pump, you've got what's commonly known as a C-face adapter or the pump motor adapter. Above your Rexroth pump you have a directional control valve manifold. Above it we have the four-way valve assembly, or commonly known as a directional control valve. Above it we have a flow control, but on the top we have a pilot valve with an electric coil on either side. So I don't know if you can see that, but the coil for it is up in there. If we move to the front of the machine, some of these items are pretty self-explanatory, but we'll go through them quickly. Of course, your gauge for your hydraulic oil pressure tells you the pressure of the hydraulics when the machine's operating. The pressure control valve is in the middle. It turns your hydraulic pressure up and down, therefore increases your water pressure or decreases. To the right we have a gauge giving you the boosted water pressure on the machine while it's running. Below it we have a Barksdale pressure switch, and it shuts your machine down if you don't have enough boosted water pressure. Below it we have the low pressure incoming water filter, and that pretty well gets us taken care of the front. We'll move around to the end and we'll start there. Okay guys, we're on the right hand side of the pump. Remember, on the front of the pump, the little black knob, compensator knob, where you turn your pressure up and down, we always look at that as the front of the pump. Therefore this is the right hand side, or what's noted to be that way. There's a lot of stuff on this side of the pump. It's kind of busy, so we're just going to kind of work our way through it, starting at the back of that compensator assembly. So up here in the corner you have the back side of the compensator assembly. You can see there's a lot of hydraulic cartridges and stuff in this assembly, and at the bottom you can see a black coil. When this black coil is energized, that's your low pressure setting that you use to pierce product. When that's initiated, it opens this dump valve, allowing the water to be reduced to the pressure you have that set at. It also, this valve's used whenever you push your stop button in, it also lets that water escape. So that's what this assembly is for. You can also see the back side of the gauges and stuff here, the hosing, and this small nut that's on the top of this. When you get ready to change your filter and stuff, you turn that counterclockwise and loosen that, and it lets you take the sump off of this filter housing. If we work our way to the right, we have our air pressure regulator. That basically regulates the air pressure going to this normally open valve. As you can see, it's got a small yellow lock on it. If you have a lockout tagout procedure when you're getting ready to perform maintenance, you can simply slide this back and forth, and it allows you to put a lock through that hole that's in the side of it. Working your way across, this is your pneumatic solenoid valve. Basically controls the opening and closing of the air going into the actuator on this valve. This is your normally open valve assembly, and like I said, when it opens, it allows the water to escape the system through this catcher tube assembly that's on the end, and it comes back into your inlet water. So that's how that works. The catcher tube assembly is basically for that high pressure water to shoot into it, and it disperses through the drain. It's got some impingement disc in the bottom to keep it from that high pressure water from shooting through the end of it. Work our way across. Of course, this is your high pressure water going out of your machine. You're going to hook your whip on the other side of the bulkhead, and that's where your high pressure water leaves. You have your hydraulic oil filter assembly here. It's got a gauge on the side. It's got yellow, green, and red on it. If it's in the green, then it means your filter assembly is good. If it starts getting into the yellow or the red, then you should change this hydraulic filter. This is the way that your pump cools the hydraulic oil. It sucks in, of course, through your recirc pump, comes through, goes through the filter, goes into the plate exchanger, which you'll see is in the back. And one side of that plate exchanger's got oil running through it, the other side's got the water running through it. And that water to oil is how that transfers the heat out of your machine. Working your way down the back side of the bulkhead, of course you have your water out, your air that's coming into the machine, bleed valve exhaust. Any water coming from your bleed valve comes back in. You have your low pressure cutting water coming returned back from your booster pump valve. Cutting water in is the supply line going to the booster pump. You have the mechanical water valve here. You can adjust it by turning the top of it clockwise or counterclockwise. That's how you increase or decrease the temperature of this machine. The more you turn it clockwise, the more pressure it takes from the thermocouple to open the valve, therefore increasing the temperature of the unit. Of course, that works just the opposite by turning it counterclockwise. Going on further down, you have the cooling water, cutting water outs, and of course your drain for your hydraulic reservoir on the bottom. If we work back across the unit, this is your booster pump. This is what creates the low inlet, the low water pressure on your pump going into your cylinders. These are set at different pressures depending on the unit you have. You'll want to check your manual for specific water pressures on specific units. If you need to increase the pressure of the booster pump, you always do this through the relief valve up here. You break the small jam nut loose, and you turn this clockwise to increase the pressure, counterclockwise to decrease the pressure. And like I said, you would always want to check your manual for the proper settings, water pressure settings on that. The inlet water comes in, goes through a strainer. The bottom of the strainer simply unscrews. Periodically you would want to take that off and check to make sure you don't have any debris or anything in the screen. If you do, that can be flushed out and just reused. Once you have it clean, you can screw it back onto your unit, make sure it's sealed good and tight, and then you can go on. That pretty well sums up this side of the pump. There are specific areas in your manual that'll help outline these areas if you have further questions. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions. We're on the back of the pump now. There's not a lot going on back here, so we're just going to go through it basically on the bulkhead on that side and a few things there, and then work our way across the pump, and then of course we'll move around to the electrical panel. If you work your way down the bulkhead fitting, you have your high pressure cutting water out. Like the rest of this stuff, it's pretty self-explanatory, but this is where the high pressure water leaves your unit. Air supply, this is where you would hook your plant air to this unit to run your dump valve and things like that. On down, bleed valve exhaust, anytime you go to a low pressure setting or depress your emergency stop, any high pressure water that's being depleted out of the machine, this is where it's going to exit the machine at. your low pressure cutting water in. Pretty self-explanatory. This is where you're going to hook your supply water to this machine that would be used for the cutting. So therefore, if you only have filtration on a certain volume of water used for cutting water only, this is where you would hook it. Cooling water in and out, really self-explanatory. This is where your supply water would go to help cool the machine. That cooling water goes through your plate exchanger and then back out. So some people have those going to drain. Most customers find they use some kind of chiller unit and a closed circuit unit, so those are in and out for that. Top pan drain, really self-explanatory. Any kind of water during repairs or procedures or leaks or anything that goes into this top pan comes down and exits there. Your reservoir drain is connected to this hose, and if during maintenance when you need to drain the reservoir, that's where you're going to hook a hose or a sump to do that, to drain that oil out. Working our way across, of course, this is a hydraulic reservoir. This is a redundant model pump, so you have your back intensifier, your pressure hoses there, along with your proximity wires. Standard units that aren't redundant, you're not going to have these hoses and things on the back side of your unit. Fill cap that you're going to use to put your hydraulic oil in. Below it, you have a sight glass telling you the level, and it's got a thermometer inside to tell you the temperature. Working right across, you have the float/temperature switch. Your float switch and temperature switch are both on the same unit at the bottom of that, so if you have to repair or look or test any of those items, that's where they're located. It's inside on the bottom of that unit. Coming on down, clean out covers, pretty self-explanatory again on that. Anytime you have to get inside there to clean or just clean it to put new oil and stuff in it, that's where you're going to get into your reservoir and clean it out. We're going to go ahead and move around the face of the electrical panel and we'll go through that. Okay guys, we're on the electrical panel, the left hand side of the pump. Pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to go through a few of these items. Emergency stop, really self-explanatory. If some type of emergency happens and you need to shut the unit down and bleed the water, just depress the stop button. To pull it out, of course, it's got arrows on it. Just barely turn it clockwise and the stop button will come out on its own. This is your start button. You can either start the pump from here or depending on how it's interfaced with your table equipment, you can start it remotely. The selector switch for a redundant style pump from A to B intensifier. If your unit has this, you want some more information on it, there is a video on A/B switching. If you've just got a regular unit, of course you're not going to have this switch to start off with. Of course, underneath you have your error meter. At the top over here, a couple warning labels. If you need in it, make sure you follow your lockout tagout stuff. This is your disconnect, turning your main power on and off. Below we have fault lights for a variety of different shutdowns. If for some reason you have one of these on, you'll want to check out what's actually wrong with it, make the necessary repairs to reset any of these fault lights, depress your emergency stop, and when you pull it back out, it'll reset these as soon as you push the start button. Moving left to right, we got low oil. Simply means that the hydraulic fluid in your tank is too low. You would just want to refill it and restart the unit. Low water pressure is your boosted water pressure. If it comes on telling you that the boosted water pressure is too low, you want to make booster pump adjustments and then restart your unit. High oil temp, the hydraulic fluid inside your reservoir is too high. You'll want to refer to your manual on things that you would adjust or look for on temperature. Overspeed simply means your intensifier is cycling too fast from left to right. Briefly, it could be an orifice, water leaks, things like that, but if the unit is traveling too fast, it'll shut down overspeed. This helps protect this unit from cavitation. Stall means that your pump is set in one position too long without a proximity switch. Once it's breached that time period in the program, it shuts down on stall. Again, push your emergency stop in and out and you can reset that and of course restart. Overload on a machine simply means that there's an overload relay inside your electrical panel, and it is showing a fault error. There's 6 different reasons that overload can shut down. So this is just telling you that it's showing a fault. To get the specific fault on that, they're labeled on the side of the overload itself. I'm not going to get inside the electrical panel and go through those items, because you really need to have a qualified electrician. If you need to be inside this unit, you need to be qualified or have an electrician to be able to do those things for you. That pretty well goes through the electrical panel. We're going to move back around to the front of the pump. We'll be with you in just a moment. Hey guys, we're back around the front of the pump. This concludes the general overview of a K-Series pump. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you have any further questions or need any further information, please feel free to contact us via email or phone number. Usually put that information on the bottom of the screen. Again, thank you for watching, and thank you for using WSI equipment.